Park Ji-hoon, the ruthless leader of the Iron Lotus syndicate, stepped out of his sleek, bulletproof sedan. 4 stone-faced bodyguards moved in a tight circle around him, their hands hovering near their hidden holsters. The morning air at his private estate was perfectly still until a small, hunched figure emerged from behind a cold concrete pillar. She wore tattered, traditional rags that looked like they belonged in a history book. Before his guards could even raise a hand, the woman spoke. "Don't move. Follow me." The quiet whisper cut through the morning like a blade, freezing the most feared man in Seoul dead in his own driveway. His ironclad security routine, planned down to the second, shattered instantly. Ji-hoon was a kingpin of global logistics, a man who moved billions of dollars in illegal cargo across oceans with a single nod. He lived in a world of sharp glass, cold steel, and absolute power, where his word ended lives before his tea grew cold. Yet standing before him was this frail old woman. Her hands trembled so violently they seemed ready to snap, and the faint, heavy smell of burning incense clung to her clothes, clashing with the sterile, expensive scent of his compound. She looked like a ghost from a past he had worked his entire life to erase. Despite the armed men surrounding him, Ji-hoon felt a strange, chilling pull. For the first time in 20 years, his heartbeat skipped. He ignored his lead guard's warning growl, took a slow breath, and stepped forward, drawn by a gravity he could not explain. He followed her into the shadows, leaving his empire behind for a moment, unaware that his entire world was about to change. Ji-hoon's lead guard, a man known for his brutal speed, reached out to shove the woman aside. "Get back, old hag," the guard barked, his face twisting in disgust. But before the guard's hand could even graze her shoulder, the woman reached into her sleeve. She didn't pull out a weapon or a threat. Instead, she let a single rusted iron coin slip from her palm. It hit the sun-baked pavement with a sound that felt way too loud, like a heavy stone dropping into a quiet well. Ji-hoon squinted at the ground. His heart stopped. It was an iron coin, crudely marked with a jagged cross, a relic from the cold, forgotten orphanage where he had spent his earliest years. He had buried that life long ago, hiding the memory deep behind his walls of money and power. He thought he had destroyed every single link to that place, yet here it was, mocking him in his own driveway. He watched the coin closely. It sat on the steaming asphalt, but it didn't look like it belonged in the summer heat. A thin layer of frost seemed to crawl across the edges of the metal. He could almost feel a wave of unnatural, biting cold radiating from it, despite the blistering sun. It was a sensory detail that made no sense, a glitch in his reality that froze his thoughts solid. His logic, usually as sharp as a diamond, shattered. He had built his entire empire on the belief that the past stays dead, but the chill coming off that coin told a different story. It was as if the metal held the frozen breath of a winter he thought he had escaped decades ago. The guard froze, too, sensing the sudden shift in his boss. Ji-hoon didn't look at his men. He couldn't take his eyes off the coin. In that small, silent moment, the world of the Iron Lotus faded away, replaced by the crushing weight of a memory he had tried to outrun. The old woman did not say another word. She simply reached out her trembling hand and offered him a thick, yellowed envelope sealed with dark red wax. It looked like a hidden letter from a forgotten time. Ji-hoon ripped it open, and his fingers brushed against cold plastic. He pulled out a heavy microcassette recorder. It was a very old piece of technology. In the study of human behavior, we learned that a sudden, strange change in our normal environment acts like a biological alarm bell. Just like a doctor spots a sudden, dangerous spike on a health monitor, Ji-hoon's brain instantly knew this outdated object was a major warning sign. It proved his perfect, high-tech world had a massive blind spot. He pressed the clumsy play button. The audio was harsh and raw, filled with loud static and the hum of background noise. Then, a familiar voice cut right through the hiss. It was Kang, his closest friend and second in command. Kang was calmly nomming the exact hour he would launch a coup to take over the Iron Lotus. Think of human trust like a heavy steel bridge. It takes years of careful, hard work to build. But if there is a hidden weakness in the concrete, the whole bridge can crash down in an instant. Hearing Kang's confident voice was the terrible sound of that bridge snapping in half. The tape kept playing, delivering its awful truth. Kang was not just planning to steal the business. Through the gritty static, Ji-hoon heard the chilling, relaxed sound of Kang laughing as he talked about the disposal of Ji-hoon's family. He laughed as if he were talking about throwing away junk mail. As a trusted guide in reading human nature, I can tell you that the most deadly dangers almost never come from loud, angry enemies. They usually come from the quiet smiles of the people standing right beside you. The raw data on the tape was a brutal fact that could not be ignored. The man Ji-hoon trusted most was a predator. The evidence was right there in his hand, offering a harsh but necessary lesson. You must always verify the loyalty of your inner circle before it is too late. Ji-hoon's movements were as smooth as still water. He tucked the recorder into his inner coat pocket, his face a perfect mask of calm. He didn't rush or shout, because in high-stakes situations, panic is the fastest way to lose. He walked into his office, the heavy oak doors closing with a soft, final click. With a steady hand, he poured a cup of green tea. The steam rose in graceful curls, a simple, warm routine that stood in stark contrast to the cold betrayal burning in his pocket. Just as a pilot stays focused on the controls when the engine starts to fail, Ji-hoon focused on his next move. He pulled out his phone and tapped the private line for Kang. He knew that in a conflict, information is your most valuable asset. If you show your enemy your hand too early, you lose the game before it even begins. He held the phone to his ear, his voice smooth and welcoming. "Kang," he said, his tone filled with the warmth of a long-time brother. "I'm looking at the logistics report for the midnight shipment. Everything looks good, but I need you to double-check the landing docks." As he spoke, his eyes were locked on his hidden security monitors. These screens were his most vital tool, showing him the true reality behind the lies. On the screen, he saw Kang sitting in a distant office, his feet up on the desk. He watched Kang's every twitch, every shift of his eyes, and the way his hand gripped his own phone. It was a masterclass in reading human behavior under pressure. While Kang laughed and agreed with the fake plan, Ji-hoon was mentally taking apart his friend's defenses. He was a scientist of survival, observing the data of Kang's deceit while playing the part of a leader who suspected nothing. It is a hard truth to learn, but the best way to handle a snake in the grass is to keep it talking while you prepare your trap. Ji-hoon stepped out onto his private balcony, the sunlight hitting his face with a warmth that felt dishonest. Far below, the shipping docks were a hive of movement, bathed in a bright, golden glow that made everything look clean and peaceful. It was a beautiful day, the kind where you might think nothing could ever go wrong. However, life often hides its biggest dangers in the most normal, pleasant moments. Like a biologist studying a sample under a microscope to find a hidden virus, Ji-hoon raised his long-range optics to the horizon, searching for the truth. He moved the lenses across the rows of colorful shipping containers until he found him. Kang was standing near the edge of the water, looking relaxed as he spoke to a man Ji-hoon recognized instantly, the leader of the rival syndicate. It was a clear, undeniable case of betrayal. If you have ever felt like something was off, in a relationship but couldn't name why, your brain was likely doing exactly what Ji-hoon's optics were doing, looking for the visual proof of a hidden agenda. Ji-hoon activated the lip-reading software synced to his phone. The computer analyzed the movement of their faces, turning silent motions into cold, hard data. A text box popped up on his screen, translating their conversation in real time. The words appeared on the glass, steady and sharp. "By midnight, the Iron Lotus will have a new master," the screen displayed. Seeing those words written out was like watching a sudden drop in air pressure before a massive storm. The brightness of the day didn't matter anymore. The storm was already here. It was a brutal reminder that when someone is working against you, they usually show it through their actions long before they show it with their words. Ji-hoon stood perfectly still, his heart rate steady. He now had the visual confirmation he needed. The bridge was not just cracked, it was about to fall. The trap was set, and for the first time he knew exactly who was holding the match. Ji-hoon stepped back inside, moving with the quiet precision of a shadow. He walked into his personal living quarters, a space he had always considered a sanctuary of comfort and safety. But now, his perspective had shifted entirely. In the world of strategy, we learn that a space is only as secure as the person controlling it. He no longer saw a bedroom or a study. He saw a tactical kill box. To survive, he had to treat his own home like a battlefield. He sat at his terminal and began to work, his fingers dancing over the keys as he rerouted the digital security grid. With a few commands, he wiped his own movements from the system, effectively turning his guards blind to his location. Every soft footstep he took on the polished hardwood floor felt like walking across a hidden minefield. He was a stranger in his own home, a man living in the middle of a house that had suddenly turned into a foreign, dangerous space. It is a strange and lonely feeling when the environment you built for peace becomes the place where you must prepare for war. He moved the furniture and locked the smart locks, creating a new, hidden path that only he knew. He was stripping away his own comforts to make sure that when the clock struck midnight, he would have the total advantage. This is a powerful lesson in self-reliance. Sometimes, to protect your future, you must be willing to abandon the safety of your current life. He wasn't just hiding, he was building a trap. He watched the monitors as his own guards walked past his door, completely unaware that their boss was no longer where they thought he was. He was becoming a ghost in his own empire. It was a cold, calculated move, but it was necessary. By changing the landscape of his home, he ensured that if anyone dared to enter with bad intentions, they would find themselves walking into a wall of silence. He was ready, and for the first time, he felt the heavy, quiet confidence that only comes when you stop trusting the system and start relying entirely on your own prepared plan. The clock struck midnight. The air was heavy and completely still as Kang's dark car rolled smoothly through the main gate of the compound. He was ready for his grand takeover. He expected sudden alarms, shouting, and the messy, chaotic rush of guards running to their posts. But there was nothing. No sirens wailed and no warning lights flashed in the dark. The entire compound was swallowed in a deep, unnatural quiet. In the natural world, when a busy forest suddenly goes completely silent, it is not a sign of peace. It is a clear warning that a top predator is hunting nearby. Kang drove forward, firmly believing he was the hunter, completely unaware that he had just walked straight into a cage. As his car reached the exact center of the courtyard, the trap finally sprang. It did not happen with a loud explosion or a blaze of wild gunfire. As a guide in human behavior, I can tell you that real, absolute control rarely looks like an action movie. True power is often silent. At the exact same moment, two large, unmarked black SUVs rolled out from the deep shadows. One smoothly blocked the main gate behind Kang, while the other perfectly cut off the secondary exit in front of him. They moved with the cold, perfect timing of a well-oiled machine. There was no screeching of tires or yelling. There was just the heavy, undeniable presence of solid steel locking him in place. Silence was the ultimate weapon here. When you need to neutralize a serious threat without causing a panic, you do not create more chaos. Instead, you remove the oxygen from the room. Just as a dangerous fire quickly dies when it runs out of air, Kang's bold confidence vanished in that suffocating quiet. The soft, heavy thud of car doors closing echoed across the pavement. Men in dark, unmarked gear stepped out, perfectly surrounding Kang's vehicle. They did not yell nervous orders or wave their weapons around. They simply stood there, an unmoving wall of elite, silent professionals. The sheer lack of noise was terrifying. It proved a level of absolute control that angry shouting could never achieve. Kang sat frozen in the driver's seat, his hands gripping the wheel until his knuckles turned white. He realized, far too late, that the smartest way to catch a dangerous target is not to chase them down, but simply to stand exactly where they are going to land. Ji-hoon stepped out from the shadows of the main building, his movements steady and deliberate. The dim light of the courtyard caught his face, showing not anger or rage, but a calm, cold resolve. He walked slowly toward Kang's car, the silence around them feeling heavier than a physical weight. Kang watched through his windshield, his eyes widening as he recognized the man he had meant to destroy. The pride that had fueled his betrayal evaporated in an instant. Just as a heavy storm cloud is stripped of its power once it loses its moisture, the fight completely drained from Kang's face. He looked at the silent guards and then at Ji-hoon, knowing that every possible escape route had been permanently closed. With shaking hands, Kang reached under his seat. For a fleeting second, he considered his pistol, but he knew it would be a useless gesture. He dropped the heavy weapon onto the floor mat, the dull thud signaling his total defeat. There was no need for a struggle or a dramatic confrontation. The trap was already absolute. When an individual realizes that their entire plan was built on a foundation of sand, the pressure of reality is often heavier than any physical chains. Kang stepped out of the vehicle and looked up at the dark sky, his shoulders finally slumping. He whispered, "I should have known the cycle would find me." In that moment, he wasn't just a traitor giving up. He was a man finally seeing the truth of his own actions. His burning ambition, which had once felt so unstoppable, was now completely extinguished by the heavy, crushing weight of his own betrayal. He surrendered to the void, not out of fear of the men around him, but out of a sudden, deep understanding that his time was over. He had tried to break the system from the inside, but the system had simply rearranged itself to remove him. Ji-hoon just watched, his expression unchanged. There was no need for insults or grand speeches. The outcome had already been decided by the choices Kang made weeks ago. The institutional cleanup was finished, and the space was once again under the control of its rightful master. 6 months passed, and the world had moved on, though the change at the heart of the Iron Lotus was profound. The syndicate, once a shadow empire built on fear and illicit trade, had been completely dismantled. In its place, Ji-hoon had established a massive, legitimate charity foundation. The billions that once flowed through dark channels now funded orphanages, schools, and medical clinics for the very neighborhoods he once ignored. It was a complete transformation of purpose. In science, we observe that energy is never truly lost. It is simply transformed from one state to another. Ji-hoon had taken the same intensity he once used for destruction and repurposed it to build something that could actually last. The scene shifts to a quiet, sun-drenched garden tucked away in a peaceful corner of the city. The noise of the busy world feels a million miles away, replaced by the soft rustle of leaves and the distant song of birds. The old woman who had changed the course of history sits at a low wooden table. She is calm, her movements graceful and sure as she carefully paints traditional Korean calligraphy onto a long scroll. Her brush moves with the wisdom of someone who has seen the rise and fall of countless empires. She pauses as a shadow falls across her paper and looks up. Her eyes are clear, holding the weight of a long life lived with truth. As she speaks, her voice is gentle but carries the firm strength of a mentor who knows the value of hard-won peace. "Power is not in what you hold," she says, her gaze steady, "but in what you are willing to let go of to save your soul." It is a final, vital lesson. We often think that keeping a tight grip on our status or our belongings makes us strong, but real strength is knowing when to release the things that threaten our character. By letting go of his dark empire, Ji-hoon didn't lose his power. He finally reclaimed his humanity. The cycle of greed had been broken, and in its place, he had found a new, quiet strength that no amount of money could ever buy.